Welcome back. Welcome back to Box the Battlefield, gentlemen. Good to see you again. As you know, we've gone forward with burning out our King Tiger. We've started the paint schemes for doing that. But some of the things, and some of the things you guys do don't involve Zimmerit. Some of the tanks that you do Sherman tanks or Allied vehicles, Russian vehicles, and obviously no Zimmerit. I have this Panther that's coming along from another project that's in the stage of the same situation that this one's in, but with no Zimmerit. So I'm going to talk about this briefly, but some of the things that we'll do this morning are going to be on this Panther, like I say, just because the majority of models, I would say the majority, but let's just say that probably 75% of the models you make are probably without Zimmerit. So let me take that into account when speaking to you guys. And one of the references for some of the things that we do, Miguel is one of our favorite maulers, of course, and he's done this beautiful T55. Now this article goes back, I'm trying to think, this is spring of 05, and it's issue number 10 in the Extreme Modeling magazines. Probably hard to find, but chances are too that most of us have this issue in our library. So there's the cover, so that you guys know what the cover looks like. Your magazines might be not in sequence, so as long as you get a reference for the cover, this might be easy to find in your library. So check out this one. It's got some great pictures, and Mig is obviously one of the world's best modelers. He can walk you through. Now the text is obviously in English, but the translation from Spanish to English, there might be the odd process left out, and we all get that, guys. We weren't born yesterday, but following along with the pictures is going to be a great help. So use this as a guide. I'm not convinced some of the things he says is involving the thickness of steel and all models and tanks burn up the same. I have some problems with that. I mean, there's different thicknesses of steel in here, which are going to take on different effects as far as the burning colors and what have you. So, but nevertheless, this is a great article. And I also dug out an old article here. This is from December of 13. And it has some great shots of a King Tiger roadside and burning Zimmerit and that sort of stuff. So a little bit of ash up in here. All things that we've been working on through this process. So keep in mind little articles like this. They may not, you may find an article on a Panzer IV or something, but the process is going to be the same. The burning of the Zimmerit. Now, and keep in mind, unless you have a blowtorch against a piece of Zimmerit, it's not going to burn. It is simply made to smolder, and or it's not made to smolder, obviously, but it's not. You're never going to see a King Tiger moving down a highway or a roadbed or in a field engulfed in flames because the Zimmerit is on fire. So keep that. It's only going to burn if you have the heat source right against it. So keep those things in mind too when you're applying the Zimmerit ash and the burning effect that's going on in here. So one of the things I'm going to do is just, and I said last time we were together that orange and this kind of color is not my favorite for adding to the tanks, but thinned out extremely, like 95% thinner, I can get away with a nice little subtle bit of orange on my tank. I just don't want to do what Miguel did, which is, frying the thing right up. you and I have worked too hard on getting these colors on here to bake the thing. And also too, like, who knows what this was hit by? This could have been an Abrams tank or a missile of some sort. 60 years after this kind of attack. So maybe things are, the ballistics now versus then are obviously slightly different. So this explosion might have been way more, generating way more heat and stuff. So keep those things in mind too, that sometimes the passage of time can alter possibly the effects. Plus too, these two vehicles, for reasons that are obvious, I don't want anything of any sort of shell hits back in here, because what that means is the gas tanks are going to explode, and the whole rear end of the tanks have gone missing. So I don't have the time, and I don't have the ability to model that sort of stuff. So I keep all my shell hits up in the front end of the tank, and you can see here, before we get into talking about our diorama, how the color varies. This part of a King Tiger is very tight and small, and the color and the color of the steel I've changed so that when you get up in here where there's a bit of volume, a bit of oxygen and what have you inside this tank, you know, possibly a lot more burning going on up in this area of the turret versus this little compact area in the front of the tank. So keep those things in mind too. Now, one of the things I've done accidentally, the strongest part of this tank is obviously the front end, like any tank. And I have burnt a little bit too much of this sheet of steel. Now, this steel here is probably 4 to 5 inches thick. The steel on the top is probably less than 2. So the burning inside is going to have a different effect on this sheet of steel versus the top steel. So what I'm going to do is just, and when Robert brings the camera work in, you gentlemen will be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. Beginning to see how this piece of steel is equivalent to the top of the tank. The reality is it's not going to be the same color. So I'm gonna fade out a little bit of this burnt color just by bringing back some of the green and some of the ochre that I've used to paint the other camouflage parts. But we'll get into that probably at our next session, and it'll all be cleaned up off camera. So just keep all those things in mind when you're doing this. You can't look at this with kaleidoscope eyes and, you know, a little bit of weed going on. You have to think it through. You have to turn into a 35th scale guy and you know, walk through it. You can't just, I'm going to burn out a tank today, and get out your proper colors and start airbrushing your tank. You gotta take reference. You gotta do all those things in the process. So just keep all these things in mind. It's going to look much better if you do that. But let's put on this little faint orange area, this burning effect, which heat causes rust, as we all know. So there's going to be a little bit of this color hanging around on the fringe of our little burnt area. Not on the Zimmerit, of course, but on the top of the tank. So let's do that, but we're going to actually execute it on the Panther. And I'll explain why in a minute. So stay tuned. Robert will bring the camera in and we'll get to that. Here's where the burning has taken place on the top of the King Tiger. And you can see a pinch of this orange color that I'm about to mix here and demonstrate on this Panther. I moved ahead after the last lesson and did this immediately after airbrushing all this. I had to get the effect, and I had to so I did it off camera, but basically this is a very thin down oil, almost a filter. And there's the part where I have probably made a mistake with the color. I'm going to airbrush that back to one of the original colors. And once again, guys, as I can repeat for a minute. The steel in here is extremely thick, so the burning effect is going to be such as it is. So there's the burning shots there, and I've touched up a little in here with that little rust color. So anyway, let's move to our Panther, and then I'll demonstrate how I did that. And then we'll talk about our diorama moving forward and ask you guys whether or not you guys want to see groundwork or you want to see the painting of the Willys Jeep, or both, or that sort of thing. So like I say, 75 probably percent of the 80% of the models you guys are going to make are probably unzimmered vehicles, and chances are you guys performing that on vehicles is probably small as well. Just being a visitor to all these model shows, you don't see too many burnt out tanks, so therefore to stretch this out further than we have to isn't necessary. But let's just pretend that this is the King Tiger and the King Tiger with no Zimmered. So the colors I use are 502, 92 is the number, German ochre. And then, of course, we always have these buried in our boxes. This is an old Winsor Newton chrome orange, which we'll use too. Now, 502 has this on the market, or a very similar color. If you can't find this, switch to our 502, and I don't know the orange number, but I can find out for you quick enough. But with a little bit of Humbrol thinner, and I'm mixing a color that's very mild here, 90% thinner, I'm sure. But so you can see how thin it is. And here's our Humbrol thinner that we use to thin the oils. And see the color in here, very, very soft. And those represent shell hits that possibly happened 3 days ago in this little King Tiger's life. So the rust and the that sort of thing hasn't set in yet. This is not one of those ones that they use for target practice, and the actual original shell hits happened 3 weeks ago. So just on the fringe of the heat, I'm going to give the Panther a filter. And if you were doing this to a Sherman, or rather if you were painting a knocked out Sherman or knocked out T-34, this process is going to be identical. And I just stipple a orange filter on there. And then I'll hit it with the blow dryer so it'll dry quick so you guys can see the effect. And the closer you get to the burnt out area, the darker color, the fried up, brewed up part, the more harder it is going to be to see this color. But as you move to the perimeter of your hit, then it starts to show. And just, as you guys can see, I'm stippling this on. You don't want this sort of action, left and right, up and down, north and south. Just dabbing is good enough. And just be careful around areas like this, where the metal is not as thick. In fact, I maybe will use a heavier orange on that, just because it's thinner steel. And then this mantlet on this Panther, you know, it's a disconnect from this steel. So again, take all these things into consideration when you're painting it. I'm going to leave that at rest for now and just carry on our stippling. Let's just switch positions here. And I'm, as you guys have probably gathered, I'm more of a subtle guy versus harsh. So I'm going to go at this softly and build up layers versus pounding this with some orange color. See, like that's too heavy for the type of work that I like to do. So I'll just go to our thinner. Just direct thinner and then start. So this is a clean brush, no paint, and just move that heavier dose of orange along a little softer. But you can see how it shows up over top of the German yellow. You can definitely see the orange bleeding in a little bit. Now, one of the comments, and you see how I've sprayed out the door a little bit too. The little hatch there is a different shade than the other part, simply because it's a different thickness of steel. So all these things just make your model look a little more interesting. So just keep in mind this sort of stuff. And then if we leave that like that, and then go back with stippling of a much thinner orange, suddenly the interest around the hatch is there. You see how the color varies immediately. And those kinds of things are, like I say, sometimes you have to shrink yourself down to 35th scale to now that that's sat on there for a minute, I'll get a nice clean and then just wick that in. Very subtle. And the beautiful part about this, guys, is the following. If what you just do isn't to your liking, you know, it's your first time doing it, or you know, the end result is not what you were looking for, just take out your color again. Take out your burnt colors. You're mixed with a little these colors. Just take them back out again and just re-airbrush the whole darn thing. Let it dry thoroughly. Maybe this afternoon it'll be dry enough. Just repaint the whole 9 yards as far as the burnt out part, and tomorrow just go at it again with the oil paints. You don't have to worry at all about, you know, geez, I screwed my model up. I've worked 2 weeks on building it, and I've worked a month on painting it, and now I've screwed up. Don't worry, guys. Everything's repairable, everything's fixable. Now, let's talk about this part of the tank for a minute. This fender here. I've glazed it with a little bit of airbrushing of this color, but certainly not any elaborate painting as far as the burning goes, simply because underneath here is a huge track. You got your wheel assembly and all that stuff. This attaches to the tank in a very small area, just with a couple of bolts, 5 or 6 bolts to the tank. Other than that, it's open air. There's no gasoline fire or anything that's underneath this fender. So once again, guys, walk through this before you start the paint. Walk through what you're trying to accomplish here. Heavy steel, very thin steel with dirt and grime and heavy track underneath here. Your fender is not going to suddenly be engulfed in friggin' hot flame and all that sort of stuff. So, like I say, walk through this little process a little bit before you get your brushes out, because there's going to be things that'll catch you if I'm a judge and I see this sort of stuff going on and this is burnt to a cinder and all up in here is not. Those are instantly eye-catching mistakes that can't be made. So keep all that stuff in mind when you're burning out a tank, that certain thicknesses of steel and things that are underneath things burn rapidly, or in this case, not at all. So, like, don't fry this little lamp on your tank, because that's not the. It's the same with this little hatch, the commander's hatch. Don't go and fry that. The guy would have leaped out of this thing or not, and the hatch would have been left open, away from heat and flame and all that sort of stuff. So just be very wise when you're taking the step about painting it, because, like I say, we can get into a jam. And photographic references of cars going up in flames and all that, all these things are available online. You can easily get some references to what we're trying to do here. All right, so she's pretty much done, and you can see the orange rust trying to creep in amongst our camouflage patterns here. It's just, once again, it's another layer. It's a necessary layer to knocking out one of your tanks. See, back to the hatch situation again. This tank is probably going to have this hatch open. That's why I've left it off. It's going to be propped up in the open position. The coloring of that steel is going to be different than the steel on this doorway here, this hatch. So, once again, keep those things in mind. Now, let me put my claws onto the King Tiger that we've spent so much time on. You can see where I've stippled. I'll do some down in the bottom here. Get a nice soft color. And just a little bit in here. Now, the next step, gentlemen, is to cause or to show a little bit of, subtle burning of the zimmerit from underneath. So in other words, through the steel into the zimmerit. And you can see how the tank, where the numbers used to be, the number 2 and the 4, there's a thin airbrushing job there, 99% thinner. And just to cloud that up, and all I did was take a little bit of NATO black and our popular XF number 9, mixed the two together, and like I say, added about 99% thinner, and just glazed over top of the numbers. And you can see now that the King Tiger burnt out part is now taking on about 4 or 5 colors, and that's what you want. And as long as you stay away from our camouflage color, and you can vary that just by adding a little bit of black or a little bit of brown or something, just so it doesn't look like a matchy. Because when you stand off from the King Tiger, you can definitely see it burnt out. No matter how far the camera gets away from it, you can see where the burning has taken place versus the camouflage pattern. So make sure that you keep those colors different from one another. And then now let's talk about our diorama. And this will be brief. And then we'll talk about the wheels themselves being collapsed and what have you. This is our base. What a beautiful piece of wood, and I'm gonna put World War II on it. It's kind of crazy, but anyway. One of the things you have to do is plan it out. And there's lots of books about planning dioramas, of course. Chapin's first chapters are certainly one of the best. And this is our little prop that we use, little Tony Bell's little Jeep. The Jeep that I'm going to use will be an American Jeep with a obviously a film crew on it. Now, one of the things I'm not going to do, gentlemen, and I think I've said this much earlier in this project, is get into showing how to paint figures. I think that would just bore you to tears, and also to length of time. I mean, if you're going to paint figures for your dioramas, you have to practice every single day of the year. And for me to sit here and give you a 1-hour quickie on how to paint figures, because it's all about the face, and it'll be easy for most of you, if you can get to this part of it, it'll be easy for you to paint the body of the figures, but painting faces involves a lot of practice. So but let's just talk about the layout. Here's our press Jeep. The little photographer, which is a Bravo figure, is going to be standing photographing the shell hits. And this is about as large a diorama as I'm going to build for this project. The King Tiger is a huge tank, and as you guys know, we're going to have track sticking out on either side. So it's an easy plan. One of the things, though, that I love to do is turn the wheels on any soft skin. If I ever do the soft skins like a Jeep or a Cub wagon or that sort of thing, I like to change the wheels. These wheels are glued on straight, and one of the things I'll do with my Jeep is alter the wheels a little bit, obviously turned to the right, and we'll build up some groundwork on this moving forward, and then pretty much finish the job. Now, one of the things I'll do off camera, this is just a primer that I've used underneath the German yellow. I'll just carry on painting that and then add some green to it for our camouflage pattern. But I like to just paint a little bit of black underneath. Let's just see. There we go. And then one of the things I'm going to do in a minute is show you once again those wheels being painted. As you know, I painted them on the sprues, and I'll just show you how I got to the wheel portion of the painting of these. And again, how much are these affected by the heat and the explosion that's taking place in our King Tiger? I don't have, the references I have, again, show a lot of darkness on these King Tigers. But again, it depends on the heat of the blast. And the beauty of this photograph is right into the back end here and right up to the front. These are all camouflage. This is not burnt ash or burnt paint off the wheels. This is the camouflage pattern on the wheels there. So that tells me immediately that even though this is taking a blast and it's out of commission, the wheels have not been affected. So I'm going to keep these wheels as gray, not gray, yellow, green, and the red of our camouflage pattern. So I'm not going to alter but you can see how the suspension has been shot. The hydraulics have drained out of this tank. So obviously a shell hit of some kind. So look at the one here is just baked. So hats off to whoever fired that shot. So in any event, guys, use photographic references moving forward. And like I say, I'm going to give you a quick one more turn about talking about these wheels. And then we'll move forward with putting it all together. Next time we're together, you're going to see this tank with the wheels on, some fenders on it, And we just about finished our project. So we'll talk about the diorama. And if you guys want, I can do a couple of sessions on the groundwork, or we can just move into painting the Jeep. I'll let you guys fire back with what you want to see, because I don't mind at all covering a couple episodes on groundwork and that thing. We've done it in the past, and doing it again moving forward is fine with us. So anyway, so there's our project. I'm gonna prepare the airbrush to be painting these wheels again, and then we'll be back to see you in a couple of minutes. Thanks so much for watching, and talk to you in 5. Okay, so as you guys know, we're gonna have our King Tiger with the suspension down, torsion bars shot, the hydraulics burnt up and everything. And very early in these episodes, we talked about the wheels, and I've taken them off the tree that I spray painted them on. One of the things that you have to be wise of, and as you guys know, I painted them on the sprue frame of the King Tiger sprue A, but there's always sometimes a seam and some cleanup. It works fine with King Tigers, but probably worked fine with the Tamiya Tiger as well. This fella here, I think I can spray paint these right on the sprues. Tamiya does a good job of getting the, but say on a Panzer IV or Panzer III, that sort of thing, the seams are, a little larger, so they're a pain in the ass to spray on the sprues. So don't do that. Just be careful of which ones you're going to spray. But one of the things that these wheels, I've done to these wheels, is I've sprayed a little red primer in between. And I'll show you. And that's just a personal thing. I know that these wheels have a little space in them, and to have just bare plastic isn't the way to go. So I've put a little bit of red in here, and again I use XF9 and a little bit of white, gloss white, and I'll just spray the insides here. Now the color, because the ability to see in between these wheels is almost zero, don't spend any or a lot of time doing what I'm doing here. And you can spray them dark gray if you want, or just a shadow color, no problem. But just getting it off the plastic is all right. So we've done that, and as you can see, well, you can't see, even on camera, you can't see a lot of red showing, but there's just enough red. And that's just a personal thing. Now, if you're doing a Panzer III or Panzer IV where the spread of the two wheels is a little wider, make sure that you at least get rid of the plastic color by spraying something in there, shadow gray of some kind, just a Tamiya number 24 or something. But just make sure that when these are glued together, like so, there's no evidence of any plastic showing. And the way to do that, of course, is to paint it. So one of the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this wheel, and then I'm going to highlight it with another color, a little lighter color, just so you guys can see once again how I achieve that. Because one of the important things about these tanks is the quality all the way through, whether it's the shell hits, the deckling, or even the small things like the teeth on the tracks. Your model has to be done 100% the best you can do it all the way through. So don't spend hours, 20 hours painting your King Tiger and then have these inside these, plastic showing with. And one of the things too with Tamiya plastic is that it's got a sheen to it, and it's going to reflect light no matter how no matter how small it is. There's going to be reflection in there which will attract attention. So make sure that you that you paint inside and between the wheels. And it's the same, like Dave Forrest and I spend time painting the underside of our tanks. You know, we practiced the 214 on this thing so we could do the rear hatch, as you guys know. But one of the things that we have done, especially Dave more than I, but Dave spends a lot of time painting underneath these tanks. And it's a good practice to get into, because then you can practice your mud colors, you can practice your streaking, you can practice all kinds of things. And having said that, at the same time, the bottom of your tank is nicely painted. So keep all these things in mind. This plastic in the end will be all covered up. There'll be mud and slush on it, you know, that sort of thing. So take advantage of, you know, space, big, huge canvas like this to practice your streaking and your mud effects and that sort of stuff. And at the same time, you've got the bottom of your tank looked after. So, and once again, guys, you just don't want to be caught off guard by having, because plastic, like I say, has a sheen to it and it reflects light easily. So anyway, what I'll do is I'll shut the camera down, refill this with our German yellow, and then show you how this black has such a great effect. Alrighty, just bear with me a second, guys. Okay, so as you guys know, we've painted all these wheels, and just so you get that great effect again, and the reasons for painting them black first. And this wheel is about to come alive. Alright, so there's where our wheel's at. And then in a second I'm going to mix up a little extra white in here, gloss white. I'll just quickly do this one. And even though this is on the back side, in other words, you're not going to see this. It's necessary to paint it anyway, because another thing with being a judge at these shows is, once again, a guy spends 20 hours painting his model and he's got them all lined up on his tank and everything like that, bing 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 bing, but then you look underneath. So he's got his tank, and then you look underneath through here and you see a row of plastic wheels because he didn't paint the inside of the wheels. So if you have your model on display and you've got no grass and no vegetation to hide those wheels, you better paint them, because there's nothing worse than getting kicked out of a contest after you've got the most beautiful decals, beautiful tools and all that sort of stuff, and we're getting down to first, second, or third on a model contest, and somebody, and I'm not one for carrying a flashlight around unless the room where the judging is going on is in a dark, you know, sort of a hotel setting where lighting can be not as bright as we wish it was. You suddenly shine your little flashlight down there towards the back of the tank and in around the backs of these wheels, and all you see is Tamiya flesh plastic. You're doomed. So keep those things in mind when you're painting your wheels up, to make sure that you paint the backs, because unfortunately, and as you guys know too, you go to these model contests, you travel 150 miles to get there, and then at the end of the show the judge is nowhere to be found. You know, you can't ask them why you finished third or why you finished out of the running and all that sort of stuff. Personally, I hang around. I just know that if I don't You know, it's an easy leap to go from judging the models into your car and out of sight. Personally, I think that if judges hung around and gave some, this is why the AMP show is on a positive spin, is that because there's comments, there's an area for comments for judges to fill in on the sheet. So when you receive your model back after a contest at AMPS, you have small one sentence comments, maybe 3 or 4 of them in regards to your model. And one of them might be, well, you didn't paint the backside of your wheels, or, you know, that sort of thing. Your decal has a little silvering on it, or, you know, all those little comments are a great help. And it's basically helping you out for your next model. Whereas if you have a first, second, and third type of setting, and the judge, you know, he's gone home at 2:30 in the afternoon after this, then it's, you guys are all going to lose out, because it's you know, you want to advance your modeling skills. You want to know why a judge would look at one model and give it an award versus another one. So you want to find these things out, because it's a helpful hint. So once again, guys, paint the backs of your wheels. All right, so let's add a little bit of white, a little bit of gloss white to our paint here, and then we'll so this is just XF60, or to me it has a new color, XF88. I think it's a late war German yellow. Because this tin is half full, I've just used XF60. But then I add some gloss white to it. And fortunately on these wheels there's a little bit of a raised portion in these wheels, so I just want to nail that with a little bit of color. Let me just get down to that gloss white I just added. So if you guys are wondering what I'm doing here on this paint, I'm just trying to find my gloss white. So it's now coming through, so I'm just gonna hit the raised part. Like so. And then what we're going to do is then just hit it with a little wash, and then the whole thing is going to pop. So let me do that. I'll shut the camera down for a minute, go get our wash, drop it in, and then all those nuts and bolts will then just pop. Okay, so now I'm going to just add a little wash on. This is dried off camera for about 10 minutes. It's better to let it dry longer than that. And you can tell by this MIG condition of this jar that it's my go-to color. But we can see through the dirt and grime that it's MIG number 1000. And it says wash for German dark yellow vehicles. So here's our wheel. And we just want to bring out all the nuts and bolts on here. Now the MIG number 1000, I've thinned it down a little bit. It's not at full strength. It's about 50% color. So it's thin with the color, thinned with Humbrol thinner. And MIG have a odorless thinner. There's a few, enamel thinners on the market. I just use that one because I always have for 30 years. So just sticking with what I know. And now this is the important takeaway from what I just did. You have to keep your wheel horizontal, the tops, horizontal until it dries or until it catches. It might not be thoroughly dry, but at least 15 minutes your wheel has to sit, in other words, like this versus these ones, which are now dry. You can't let that wash dry with the wheel in this position. So don't stick it on your tank and then give it a wash and put the wheels, back on its holding up the tank. You've got to tilt your tank like so. In other words, on its side. Like this. Your wheels have to say, and I know that this is a Panther and these are King Tiger wheels, but just for sake of conversation, you have to keep the wheels horizontal with the ground while the wash is drying, because it's obvious what's going to happen if you don't. You're going to have these wheels with no wash up here and then a collection of dark brown wash collecting in the bottom here like a half moon. So just a little word of caution. Don't suddenly put the wash on and do this. And don't put them on your tank, wash them, and then just put your tank back down on the roadbed. You've got to keep your vehicle in that position. Otherwise, guys, it's going to be a disaster. So anyway, I'll just demonstrate that one more time. And as you can see, all these things just pop when... Now, one of the other things that's going to happen on top of this, of course, is that we may get involved with pigments and pigment fixers and decal fix to laying mud on here and gravel and what have you. Those things will all come as the story's being told, but you've got to at least get the wheels in the game. So then what you do is, now let's just leave these horizontal ones over here to dry. Now in the case of the King Tiger, I've just, these are steel wheels all the way around. I've just painted them XF24, which is a Panzer gray color. But then I just take a regular lead pencil and then just go around the edge. And this will give it just enough sheen that you're going to know that it's a steel band around these wheels. And this is probably not going to catch on camera, this little steel effect, but it may. But you know it's there. And like I say, it's if you're watching through your these videos through a phone, it's probably not going to show. But certainly if you're watching this at home on your computer, it's going to show. And that's just a little, and you can see how the light catches. And that's all you need. And then you can, I always have a pencil in my toolbox for painting. There's all kinds of little places where you're gonna need a pencil. A little show of metal. And also too, the teeth of the track are gonna follow and rub against this. So then I just give that edge a little scratch. And keep in mind, these things are underneath track, they're underneath mud, and that sort of thing. So don't spend a lot of time, if you miss a wheel or two, don't worry about it. You can't pick this up, almost with the naked eye once you get all the grass and the dirt and the grime underneath your tank. So, but you know it's there. If you're gonna do say a Tiger traveling through Rome and the thing leading up to the collapse of the Rome campaign, just before June the 6th, the D-Day Dodgers and all that, guys traveling up the underbelly through Italy. Obviously, lots of cobblestone, and so all these things, the track are going to be brighter. you know, there's the traveling through Florence and that sort of thing, that when the Germans were retreating up through and past Anzio, they roads were the only way they could get around because of the train. So traveling on cobblestone at times, you see the photographs, you see the references of tigers. Certainly not king tigers. There was none of those in Italy, but certainly tigers traveling through the streets of Italy. So through the streets of Rome and Florence and that sort of thing. So keep those things in mind when you're telling a story about the individual tank you're doing. It's important to keep those things in mind. And of course, once they get on the battlefields of Normandy, a lot less, worry about the story of this kind of thing because of the terrain that they're traveling on. So once again, keep all these things in mind when you're working on your models. They'll turn out much better in the end. So, and there you are. There's our wheels all finished. So moving forward, there's only probably one episode left other than the groundwork. But the next time you see our King Tiger, our battle damaged King Tiger, all the wheels are going to be on, the tools are going to be on, and we'll talk about maybe just putting a little bit of weathering onto the barrel, and then that portion of our story will be told. So then we'll move on to the little Willie's Jeep with the little press man behind the wheel. And moving forward, I'd just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. It's 2018 and Christmas is just a couple days away, so God bless you all, and I hope everything turns out well in the turkey department. So take care, guys. Thanks for watching.